Last week, the Heel Tough blog got a chance to sit down with former Tar Heel offensive lineman and former Inside Carolina reporter Mike Ingersoll.
Hey, how's it going, Mike?
Nothing. I'm just going to sit here cooking dinner, and whenever we're done, I'm going to go eat it.
All right, yeah, man. So, hey, thanks for taking the time to just talk to us, man. This is great, man. I know you're still very invested in the Tar Heels, so this is pretty big. So, yeah, I just wanted to start by asking you, 2-year starter at right tackle in 2009 and 2010, including starting all 13 games as a senior. Just talk about, that moment really when you found out that you were going to be a starter and just the emotions that kind of ran through you at that time.
Well, I'd had really good tutors, right? So I came up behind Garrett Reynolds and actually had an opportunity to move to guard, which for what would have been my redshirt sophomore year. And I bounced around a little bit at that point. I came in as a tight end. Coach Bunning had moved me to the offensive line, and Butch Davis came in, moved me back to tight end, then he moved me back to center, and then he moved me to tackle. And I'd kind of bounced around so much I was sort of looking for a home, and I still knew there was a lot I needed to learn about Division I football generally to be successful. So I actually turned down the opportunity to play guard, potentially start at guard as a redshirt sophomore, so that I could keep learning from Garrett Reynolds and Kyle Jolly and those guys that were in front of me that had been playing for so long. And I guess when it came time for me to actually be that guy, it was exciting, but it was also something that I'd prepared for. It was one of those things that I tried to put myself in a position to be ready for the past couple of years. Obviously, like I just told you, I tried to set myself up to be the starter at tackle specifically. So when it came time and Garrett graduated and that spot opened up, I tried to treat it like it was my position to lose, and I had plenty of competition for it, and I think that certainly kept me honest.
Yeah, you talked about it right there. You bounced around a ton, really. That's something that we see pretty commonly in college football today. A lot of those guys that maybe just don't fit at a position or that, may fit another position of need. A lot of those guys are a little skeptical to move. Were you at first skeptical to move from tight end? Did you think that, that was my position, that's what I played in high school, and I kind of want to stick there? Or was it pretty much whatever they threw your way, you were kind of like, okay, let me give this a shot because I really want to find a way to be, able to get on the field?
Well, one thing Brian Jacobs loves to say is that tight ends were the birds, right? Because Jacobs was a highly ranked tight end coming out of high school. They moved him to the offensive line. And, it's hard to give up catching passes and having actual stats in the stat book. Being out in space and running routes and things like that. That's being what you consider a real athlete. It was a difficult transition from a pride standpoint. But then, after being there for a while, you start to understand that 300-pound people aren't supposed to move that way, and offensive and defensive linemen might actually be the best athletes in the world, because what human being at that size is supposed to have foot quickness and coordination and center of gravity and balance and things like that. What human being that size is supposed to have that, at least somebody just walking around the street. We're by all BMI charts, we're morbidly obese and should be dead. Per all medical understanding, but for some reason we're actually out there in the best shape of our lives, and we're playing 60 to 100 snaps every football game. So it was a difficult transition until I realized that there was actually a lot of from an athletic standpoint. I'd worked very hard coming up in my athletic career to be considered an athletic guy, right? Like not just another body out there,
right?
But somebody who had some athleticism to him. So you feel like being bumped to the offensive line is a downgrade because you're told your whole life that you can kind of move to any position, and from there's somewhere else you can go. But once you hit the offensive line specifically, that's the end of the road. There's nowhere else you're going after offensive line, and that holds true about 99% of the time. The exception is somebody like Greg Ellaby, right, who goes defensive line to offensive line and then back to the defensive line.
Right, right.
But that's 99% of the time. Once you hit the O line, that's the end of the road. So that was kind of the thinking going into it, and Jacobs will tell you the same thing, and any guy that's ever made that transition will tell you the same thing. But once I got accustomed to it, I realized there's there's a lot less pressure when you don't have to catch passes and you don't have the entire stadium watching you. That's number one. And number two, you can still be 300 some odd pounds and pretty athletic and hang your hat on that. So that's the way I decided to approach it. It ended up serving me well.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did, man. So, I mean, you look at, some of the guys that you played with, guys like Jonathan Cooper, Travis Bond, Russell Bodine, James Hurst. I mean, and you mentioned Garrett Reynolds, Kyle Jolly. I mean, all of these guys, really just unbelievable players at Carolina, and a lot of them went on to have really successful NFL careers. I mean, just, talk about the experience of being able to play with guys like that, and then talk about, I kind of asked Travis Bond when I talked to him, just how special of a bond that you guys have on that offensive line. It just seems a little bit different than some of the other position groups.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll answer both questions in kind. The first question, with regard to what it was like playing with those guys, Sam Pittman did a really good job while we were there and he's done it everywhere he's gone. He did it at Tennessee. He was at Tennessee for 1 year, and he sent all those guys to the NFL. He did the same thing with us. We had, that 2009 offensive line, 2010 offensive line, and then every offensive line after that. So every combination of line he had after that. Every one of those guys got their shot at the NFL, and that was because we were very well coached, and Sam prepared us to be able to compete at that level and at least have an opportunity. And you obviously saw that all starting five of those offensive linemen at some point ended up, if nothing else in a training camp. I mean, people forget, Alan Telk was with the Raiders.
Right. I loved him so much. Yeah. I never got why people didn't really. NFL teams didn't get on the bandwagon. He was such a hard worker, man, and just his ability, at that left guard position was just amazing.
Yeah, and Alan did a lot of things, and he's another guy that he was 350 pounds for most of his career, and he was a heck of an athlete at that size, and that's why he got his shot. Everyone knows my story. I had my shot. Cooper, obviously, consensus All-American, first round draft pick. James Hurst just signed a nice shiny new 4-year contract with the Ravens. Bodine we just got news today. He signed with the Bills on a 2-year, $5 million deal, which is awesome for him. Travis Bond is up there doing incredible things in Canada. He's one of the premier offensive linemen up there in Canada.
Right.
And every guy in between. Cam Holland had a shot with the Chiefs. He was in camp with the Kansas City Chiefs. It seemed like everybody that we rolled out there at some point got their shot, and that's a testament to Sam Pittman and the coaching that we had. And playing with that talent level, of guys across the board makes your life a whole lot easier, and people will wonder, well, why weren't we more productive? And there's, maybe a million reasons for that. And I can't give you a straight answer. I would say that, we were fairly productive given the, scheme we were in and things like that. But we always knew that we had a guy next to us that could play. And just from a confidence standpoint and a comfort level, that made things so much easier for every guy on that line, knowing that he had someone next to him who could hold his own, and he didn't have to really worry about it. And that, that obviously started with, with my class and with the lines that I was a part of, and then, moving on, through the next 3-4 years, even as Coach Fedora took over, a lot of those players were Butch Davis products, and a lot of the offensive linemen were Sam Pittman products. They had a great foundation to be successful, in Fedora's scheme as well. It really showed you how good of players they were, being able to switch over between a pro style scheme and Fedora's obviously his pro spread style. The second question was the bond that we guys have, or the bond that we all have as offensive linemen, and that's kind of one of those cliche things you hear about, the chemistry thing on the offensive line, but it's very true. We did pretty much everything together. We hung out at the bars together. We went to restaurants together. We went to the movies together. We had our little pockets of, the closest off. Every guy had his 2 or 3 super close offensive linemen, but then we were all close generally, and that was just a function of the offensive line is a pack mentality, because we have to be 5 guys all playing harmoniously and in sync. So that carries over off the field as well. Your quarterbacks and your linebackers, they're kind of the lone wolves, but right. Offensive linemen are always, we're pack animals, right? We stick together and we do everything together, and
right.
You see that requirement on the field, and then it also translates to your personal life off the field as well. So I keep in touch with a lot of those guys still. I actually just talked to Garrett, this past week. I talk to Travis every once in a while. I keep in touch with pretty much everyone. I talked to Kyle Jolly this morning. Kyle Jolly, by the way, for any of you who had a chance to reach out to him, congratulate him. He's the new offensive line coach for Concord University up in West Virginia. Concord is a Division II program, but they're one of the more successful Division II programs in the history of the tiered college football subdivision system. So he's doing some really good things. He just left the University of Washington as a GA, and he got that head job. So that's really good on Kyle. But that's we all stay in touch even to this day, and that bond, that chemistry thing that you form with the offensive line, it's a real thing. It's not just some hokey cliche.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen it in person, and it's awesome being around offensive linemen, man. They just seem to have so much fun with it, and they can seem to joke with each other a lot more than maybe some of the other positions. And yeah, for Kyle Jolly, that's awesome. I had seen that he was out there at Washington, and now being able to get into being his own full-time guy, that's awesome out there for him. So
yeah. I'll tell you your last point about how we joke around with each other all the time too. It's actually a good observation. It's pretty well known that nobody is more critical of an offensive lineman than another offensive lineman, right? No one is more critical of the play style, of the body type, of just the general demeanor of any other offensive lineman than a fellow offensive lineman. So we're really good at tearing each other down, but then immediately building each other right back up. We're constantly busting chops. So that's a good observation, and I hadn't thought to even bring it up.
Yeah, so I mean, you have some local ties to, this area, right here in Charlotte. You played high school football at Butler High School, and you actually got to play your entire college career and high school career with Ryan Houston. So, just talk about really, the Charlotte area, and then, the connection maybe that you had with Ryan.
Yeah, so Charlotte area football, we noticed, started to blow up right around 2002, 2003, which makes sense because that was during the Independence High School heyday. Chris Leak and Mohamed Masquad, Joe Cox, Hakeem Nicks, those teams.
Oh yeah.
That was right as I was coming up, and we always knew that Charlotte was kind of an underestimated hotbed for college football talent, and it seems like now all the out-of-state schools have figured it out. Schools like Carolina and NC State, Wake Forest, always did a pretty good job of recruiting the Charlotte area. And now what you've seen is Clemson, Florida, Miami. You're seeing Stanford, Oregon. Those West Coast teams now are all starting to come in, which is a different conversation for a different day. But that's a function of how the world of recruiting has become much flatter much flatter, much smaller, much more linear, easier to get to recruits because of the advent of things like the huddle program, where you can essentially just send a coach a hyperlink now to your game tape and to your highlight tapes, as opposed to actually splicing a VHS tape like I had to do in Mike Newsom's office. Mike Newsom, the head coach at A.L. Brown in Kannapolis now. I remember splicing those tapes and physically mailing them out to schools, and I only knew to send them to the regional schools because I didn't even know there was football, west of Tennessee. So, it's a different world now. But you're starting to see those schools come into the Charlotte market because they understand that there's some pretty serious talent here, and that's, as the population grows in the Charlotte area, that's only going to grow. That's always been the reason why California and Texas and Pennsylvania and Florida have been, and Georgia included, have been so well recruited and have had so much talent come out of there, just because it's a sheer numbers game. There's just so many bodies out there.
Sure,
Charlotte is growing at the same rate that some of those smaller cities like Atlanta did in the early to mid '90s, and you're going to see a boom in recruiting around here as well. The relationship that I have with Ryan, Ryan is I can't say enough good things about Ryan Houston, and you have to kind of get to know him, I guess, to know this about him. But Ryan was in high school. He was an unbelievable athlete. We knew when he came in as a freshman. I was a sophomore. We were obviously the same year in college, but a year older in high school. So I'd already been in the program at Butler for a year when he came in, and And we had a lot of really big players come out. Jamar Adams, who played at Michigan, Kenny Moore, who played for Wake Forest back on that Orange Bowl team.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of really good players. Jason Anderson played for Wake Forest, New England Patriots for a little while. A lot of good players come out of that Butler program, and we knew that Ryan was going to be one of the more special ones. And that was just because when he came in as a freshman, he was 6'2" and 240 pounds, and he could outrun anybody and run through anybody. So, we knew we had something special on our hands, but then I actually got to got to know Ryan, through obviously football, but we also played basketball together. We played the same position. So we spent a lot of time together, and, I knew how good of a guy Ryan was and how good of a player he could be at the college level. When he decided to come to UNC, I was ecstatic. And Ryan grew as a person. He grew as a player. He's a dad now. He's one of the best dads I've ever seen, and he was in college when he had his first baby. He's a very loving, caring person, and he put in a lot of work that I don't think gets a whole lot of credit. Ryan was a casualty of the NCAA investigation. He was a projected 3rd or 4th round pick coming out in 2010 when the NCAA came in preseason and sort of dismantled us. And he was one of those guys that, they made sit because they had suspicion, I'm putting that in air quotes, suspicion that he may have done something. And then they found out, well, I think they found out much sooner, but they decided to let us know at around week 7 that Ryan was cleared to play. Well, we had to sit him the whole time because if we played any of those guys that were being held out for that exact reason, we would have to forfeit any games that they played in had they been found to have done something wrong. Obviously, 98% of them we found out, ultimately found out they didn't do anything wrong. Ryan was in that boat.
Right.
At that point, he decided to just take a redshirt year. Gio had torn his ACL in training camp, so Gio didn't play. And Ryan was slated to be the feature back the next year with A.J. Blue, and Gio burst on the scene, and we no longer, it's not Ryan's fault. We didn't need, a third down back, an exclusive third down back because Gio could kind of carry the load.
Right,
doing everything.
Exactly.
So Ryan's carries dropped, and that directly affected his NFL stock, and that's a shame because Ryan put himself in a position to be very successful with dropping the weight. I don't know if fans remember, but when he was a freshman, he was 280 pounds.
Yeah,
playing running back,
yeah,
and he was still outrunning people. He still had the center of gravity, and he still had the moves, and he could still hit a backside cut like nobody's business. But once he dropped that weight and he got down to about 235, he was the high school wrecking ball Ryan Houston again. And it's a shame that he didn't get the opportunity that I think he earned. And for whatever reason, you can blame the NCAA or you can blame whatever other reason you can think of. But that's the guy who deserved a shot and didn't get the full breadth of the NFL experience that he should have received. But he's also back in Charlotte now, and he's training athletes, and he's doing a really good job at it. And he's getting pretty successful. So if you have a high school athlete that needs a trainer, Ryan Houston's in town, and he's one of the better specimens to ever come out of Charlotte, and he's back here helping kids. So
yeah, I think he was down at the that VTO camp that they had this past weekend. So I think that's that's something that I actually almost coached in that with Vince. Vince was my first roommate in college, and I actually used to help coach that VTO camp with him. And there's a lot of talent runs through that camp too. That's a very well run operation they have there. And I had some other work stuff that came up, and I couldn't participate. But Ryan has been doing that pretty consistently. I believe Quan Sturdivant's helping him. Al Mullins has also been helping with the defensive line. He's really, that's a big Carolina connection there for anybody who wants to see some of the old guys out coaching. That's a great opportunity. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's so great to see them giving back. You talked a little bit about the academic thing. We're not going to try to get into a blame game on here. But back in 2014, I read, there was an article that came out, and it was you, defending Carolina pretty vehemently. Why was that important to you to defend not only yourself, but the university when it came to what was being said about, the university on a national level?
Well, I'm not real big on allowing, false statements to go unchecked, right? Especially when they're being spread that spread that viciously, and it was pervasive throughout the national media. It started obviously with the local media, and really what it all boiled down to was, yes, I had pride in my university, and yes, I had pride in where I came from, and the things that we did there. But really, I was just tired of me and my teammates having to defend our degrees. There was this misinformation campaign that seemed to go out. There were these fake classes. Nobody was going to class. And we didn't do any work, and we were just given grades. I joke with people all the time. I wish somebody would have told me I didn't have to go to class. It would have saved me a whole lot of early mornings.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
It would have saved me a lot of time writing papers if I knew I could have just had someone do it for me and I didn't have to do it, or they were just going to give me an A no matter what I did. It's obvious. I don't have the wool pulled over my eyes here. I mean, it's big time college athletics. That sort of stuff. Guys get help from tutors and guys get help from professors, but we didn't get help from professors and help from tutors. And I don't mean that to sound sneaky or somehow sly. It was we got help from those people because we showed that we cared, because we sat in the front row of our classes, because we took notes, and because we did our best to stay awake, even though we had 6 a.m. workouts right before an 8 a.m. class. And we showed. We went to office hours, and we did extra work, and we did things like that. And in those situations, that's typically when a professor helped us. Those are the exact same situations where a professor will help any student. And there was this line that was drawn in the sand differentiating us as athletes, and I purposely don't use the term student athlete, but us as athletes versus regular students. And my contention always was, well, if you want us to be treated differently than regular students, then treat us differently than regular students, and don't require us to have these to have these same restrictions. We have essentially a time restriction on our schedule.
Right.
We don't have classes from 8 to 12 every single day because of the way practice works out. Things like that, and that's I'm very much in the camp of there has to be a better way. There has to be well, not a better way, but there has to be any way to compensate student athletes, and that's a different conversation for a different podcast. But
right, yeah.
That a lot of that boils down to my experience at UNC and seeing exactly what benefit was conferred to the university by the revenue support athletes. And but we're getting back to the topic we were on. I defended Carolina, and the reason why I continue to defend Carolina is because I grew up in Mint Hill, North Carolina, and everybody here is a Tar Heel fan, but nobody ever seems to be able to get out of here to get to Carolina. And I had that opportunity, and I had a chance to live out a dream, and I still hold Carolina in this idealistic esteem that it's still the University of the people. It's still the school that I grew up loving. It's the reason why I always had Carolina blue basketball shoes, sneakers, and clothes, and I had Tar Heel posters on my wall, and my room was painted Carolina blue when I was a little kid growing up. And it was a dream that I got to live out, and Carolina will always be that magical, special place to me, and nothing's ever going to take that away. And for us to be disparaged publicly in the way that we were, and when I say we, I mean the football team and athletes at Carolina generally, for that to have gone down the way that it did from people who had no idea who we were, and no idea what our daily schedule looked like, and no idea the things that we did, put up with, had to listen to, had to on. For that campaign of misinformation to continue to be spread, at some point it had to stop. It still goes on, but I think the NCAA's recent findings finally put a little closure to it. Unfortunately, we will always be the stone and the glass house in the eyes of the public. So it's hard for Carolina to. We have a black eye that I don't think was self-imposed as people make it seem, and unfortunately, it's going to take us a long time to clear that up, I think.
Yeah.
And I wish it weren't the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, these people that want to come out and say this, first of all, they don't know the experiences that a lot of people go through in college. I mean, I've been a college student, and I wasn't even a college athlete. And I know it's definitely not easy having to balance life with, in certain cases, a job or something like that. I can't even imagine being a student athlete where you've got to go, like you said, to that 6 a.m. lift, and then you got to be at your 8 a.m. class. For the rest of us, we get to sleep in and roll into that 8 a.m. class, and we're the ones complaining. Meanwhile, the athletes are like, well, I've been up already for 2 hours, and, I got, something I got to go through later on today. We got another workout, or I got a film session that we got to go to. So it's definitely these people that are criticizing, they are extreme hypocrites, and they know absolutely nothing about what it takes to be a student athlete. So I'm glad that you definitely come out and defend this university, and that's awesome to hear someone that's as passionate as me and a lot of other Tar Heel fans, that was able to live out his dream as a Tar Heel. So yeah, I mean, just the last couple of things here. I did want to ask you, you do the Inside Carolina, some stuff for them at times. Me being a guy that's trying to get into broadcasting, why was it important for you to get into broadcasting, specifically, covering the Tar Heels?
Well, I mean, I've always had a very good relationship with those guys. They were fair to me when I was playing, and Buck Sanders, who runs Inside Carolina, is a great guy, and I had a relationship obviously with Greg Barnes. Don Callahan covered me when I was in high school. He was one of my first interviews I did with a college, I guess we'll call it a college recruiting website.
Right.
But those Inside Carolina does really good work, and it's nice to be able to share opinions about the university on a platform that's not affiliated with the university directly, but that has a stake in it. Most if not all of the Inside Carolina employees are Carolina grads or have some connection to Chapel Hill one way or another, and it's nice to be able to contribute to that. I always gravitated towards journalism. I always gravitated towards broadcasting, and I wanted to, I'm obviously an attorney now. But when I had the opportunity to come on board with them, it scratched an itch for me, and that's why I continued to do it. And it gives me an outlet to talk Carolina sports, and it's something off the beaten path from what I do every day in my profession, my current career. So it's a nice change of pace for me, and I get to work with some really great people, and I get to cover Tar Heel sports at the same time. And I don't know if there's anything could be better than that.
Right? Yeah, definitely, and that's definitely the feel I'm hoping. So hopefully one day I can get somewhere with them or the Tar Heel Sports Network. That'd be a dream. But last thing, I was doing some prep, and we found a guy online that has the same exact name as you, and he's a lower amateur MMA fighter. Please tell me that you're not an amateur MMA fighter. Please tell me that Jeremy Boyd is the only one that's trying to get into that out of the former Tar Heels.
I am Jay Boyd, man. You want to talk about another good kid? Jay Boyd, that is a good kid. No, I certainly am not Jay is the only one I know of who's trying to do the MMA thing. No, I have nothing to do with that. There's apparently that guy, and then there's an actor out of Chicago also named Mike Ingersoll, and those are the only two other people that I know of, at least that pop up on Google with any regularity that I've ever seen besides myself. So there's not a lot of Ingersolls running around. There is apparently an attorney who, there's a major law firm with Ingersoll in the name, and then there's also a smaller law firm based out of Winston that I got to deal with, Mark Ingersoll, M-A-R-C. I've actually been getting some of his mail down at my offices here in Charlotte. I've been having to forward it on to him. So that's how I found another one of them.
Wow,
there
man.
Are a whole lot of Ingersolls running around. Yeah, it's a small world.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, well, we hope you're doing well and everything like that. And I know that you're probably trying to keep up with this year's team and everything like that. And yeah, I know you got to go eat that dinner that you were preparing, man. So hey, thanks for coming on with us. Hey, just if you want to just give the people where they can follow you at on Twitter or wherever you want to give that to, and then we'll head off, man.
Oh yeah. So I've got a Twitter handle, which is Michael Ingersoll. It's Michael and then Ngersoll. The first L counts as an I also, at least the way that's supposed to look there. And I'm obviously on Facebook, and I've got Instagram. My Instagram is just Mike Ingersoll. You can follow me there. I tweet fairly often, and both for Inside Carolina and in my private capacity. So I try to keep things entertaining and as non-controversial as possible. But if I tick off a state fan here and there, I'm not too upset about that.
There you go, man. Hey, thank you so much, and we'll definitely have to talk to you later on in the season. All right, man?
Yeah, man. Thanks, Anthony. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. You have a great night, Mike.
You too.
All right, man. Bye.